Thank you for joining us this morning for Advocacy and Your Chamber's Budget. Whether you are watching live or on the recording, we appreciate you spending some time with us today. For those of you watching live, one of my pet peeves is when the video of the speaker covers up the slides on a PowerPoint presentation. And so if you see in the upper right-hand corner of your screen where it says on air, if you will just minimize your view to speaker view and slide it right over that on air, you will be able to see the words on all the slides through the presentation. There won't be anything in that corner. This presentation this morning is brought to you by Lumen Strategies. We work to empower chambers of commerce to be the voice for business in their community, and we do that through a variety of ways, including customized consulting services, our signature online advocacy framework program, and of course, free webinars like these. If you have not seen any of our webinars in the past, we will be putting a link in the chat. We have all of our past webinars archived, and you can go back, find the topics that interest you, and take a look at them. Our team is myself, president and owner of the company. I'm joined by Sarah Principe, our advocacy strategist, and Brittany Burton, our online learning strategist. They're both with us here today. So let's dive right into advocacy and your chamber's budget. And, at the very basic level, budgeting for advocacy programs is no different than budgeting for any of your other programs. You may have events that you need to budget for. You need to figure out how much staff time you're going to put into your advocacy program, be that through committee meetings, communications to your members, communications to your elected officials. And then obviously you need revenue. You need revenue to support your mission. And that's not any different for advocacy, whether that be through general sponsorships, event sponsorships, or tiered dues upsells. We think there's a lot of ways to make money through your advocacy program, and we're going to talk about that a little bit today. But as I said, that's kind of basic, and we do want to dig a little bit deeper. For instance, I think everybody on this call knows how to budget for an event. You need to figure out your venue, your food, the audiovisual expenses. One area that may be a little bit different for advocacy events is you may have to allocate for complimentary tickets for non-dues or non-revenue generating participants, because if you are going to be inviting elected officials, you may want to comp their ticket, obviously depending on the rules in your state, and they may vary. So that's something that you will want to check out. You don't want to get in any trouble there for giving something free to an elected official that they're not allowed to take. But in most states, for an educational event like this, you are permitted to go ahead and comp their tickets, and that's something you'll want to consider. But I did want to dig a little bit deeper into these events and really all of your chamber events. And I've created the little 4-box here, thinking about everything that you do as a chamber professional, thinking about whether you are doing that to forward the chamber's mission or to fund the chamber's mission. And so, if you think about this simple rubric, in the lower left-hand corner, you have things that lose money and are not mission focused. They neither fund the chamber's mission nor forward the mission. And then in the upper right, you have those that do both. I will say the upper left corner and the lower right corner are where things are a little grayer, because I do think both of those are important, and we'll talk a little bit more about those. So for instance, if you are just getting started in advocacy, but that is a central part of your mission, you might not have the infrastructure yet to really be able to fund that on its own. You might have an event that loses money, but it introduces all of your members to the work you're doing in advocacy, and that's okay. Obviously, you'll need to find other places in your budget to subsidize those kinds of events and those programs until they are self-sustaining. But it's okay when you're getting started to lose a little bit of money. And we'll talk about where you can find some of that money to offset those costs in a little bit. And then in the lower right, it's absolutely okay to have some events that have nothing to do with your mission. Maybe it's a bourbon raffle. That's you giving away a bottle of bourbon really doesn't do anything that meets the chamber's mission, but it could raise money for you and fund other things in your mission, like maybe that money losing event that forwards your advocacy. So those are certainly okay to do. Where it gets a little bit tricky is when you're deciding between doing two events. And I actually don't have the answer for this one. Each of you would have to decide for yourself. But let's say you have one event that forwards the mission a little bit and makes a little bit of money, and then you have another event that is not mission focused at all, but makes you a lot of money, that's the sort of thing where you're going to have to make a decision if you can't do both as to which is most important. Now, the easy one is C down here. If you have any events that are losing money and are not mission focused, get rid of them. Get rid of them today. Stop working on them and get them off of your calendar. And part of this, I think maybe you have some of these and you just don't know it. I would challenge each of you as you're putting together your budget and looking at your potential events or programs for the next year to really look at them in this context and decide what is most important to be doing. And then obviously the Gold Star program, the Gold Star event is that which really forwards your mission and raises you quite a bit of money to fund other parts of your mission. And I would submit, and we're going to talk a little bit about it today, advocacy programs often can be this Gold Star event. Not only do they really move your chamber forward as the voice for business, which I hope is part of every chamber's mission, but they can also be money magnets. There are members in your chamber who really want you to be a strong advocate for the business community, and they're willing to fund you if you are. One other thing to think about this in a different way, but Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, he once said, and it has gained traction in the entrepreneurial community, focus on the things that make your beer taste better. And that's really, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, it's saying make your product better. From a chamber perspective, it's the same thing. Make your chamber's product better, and your chamber's product is achieving the things that are in your mission. And so just as I think this is just another way to think about what we were looking at on that last page, but I would also say if you do the things that make your mission better, make your mission stronger, or achieve your mission, move you towards your mission, those are the things that are going to be funded, and it's ultimately going to make your financial situation more successful as well. Now let's talk a little bit about some of those revenue opportunities. And I've thrown up some pictures here from a couple of different chambers, some that we work with, one that we don't. Advocacy sponsors are a real possibility for you when you are starting an advocacy program or really trying to rev it up. Going to businesses that will support that part of your work, they will write you a check just so you do that work. And you'll see in the lower right-hand corner, we've got a screen grab from Opelika Chamber in Alabama. They just won Chamber of the Year from ACCE. They have a advocacy program, and you see they have 3 specific advocacy sponsors. I will note, you might not know those organizations, but both that AMEA and Spire are electric utilities. Just another little tip there. If you have, say, 2 prominent companies that do similar work in your community, oftentimes if one of them sponsors, the other is going to want to sponsor as well. If you have competing hospitals, if you have competing broadband companies, if you have competing electric utilities, that's an opportunity to go get sponsorships. In the upper right, you'll see just kind of a little table tent card with some sponsors for an event. That was a candidate reception event that we did with one of our clients, and they went out and got sponsors specifically for that event. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that. I think that's something probably that you are used to. The last one I'll mention from another client of ours, they have created a cornerstone investor tiered membership level. And this is their highest level membership. You see there, they have 5 companies that are contributing at that level. And this is one of those things, I think a lot of chambers have moved towards the tiered structure. And if you haven't, I would encourage you to do so. But part of this is talking to those at your highest level about doing more and doing more in advocacy. And one of the things I would suggest to you is look at how many companies you have at your top level tier. And if you've got, quite frankly, more than 5, you're probably feeling great. We've got 10, 15 investors at our top level, but you're probably not high enough with that top level. It's probably time to create an even higher level that is even more exclusive, that only your top 3 or 4 or 5 investors want to be in. But I would place the bet that you have members in your chamber who really want to be at the exclusive level. And if your top level is $5,000, you can probably create a $7,500 level and move 5 of the 15 people there. And, quick math, an extra 2,500 up times 5, there's another $12,500 into your budget. This is part of our talk about advocacy, because a lot of those people who want to be at that exclusive level, those companies that want to be that exclusive level, they aren't members of your chamber because they want to go to a coffee or a business after hours. If you think about, and we'll get into kind of the type of companies these potentially could be, but you have companies that really aren't interested in selling in your community. They're interested in making your community better. And, part of thinking about those companies, I love this chart. Is from a guy named Kyle Sexton. He does some consulting. Many of you may know him, really around revenue for chambers. And he says every chamber member falls somewhere into his 4 box. They either want to get something from their chamber or they want to get something done through their chamber. And then they either want to be involved or they just want to be invested. And what we're really looking for, our target, are the folks up here above the line, the folks who want to get something done. They will make that additional investment in your chamber, not because they get an extra couple tickets to their annual meeting. Quite frankly, for some of these bigger companies, that's a whole different budget. It's not even competing. They just want to make sure that your chamber is out there getting things done. So who are the members of your chamber who might fall into these categories? Utilities, we mentioned the 2 electric companies in Alabama sponsoring Opelika. Hospitals, I mentioned. Manufacturers. I mean, if you have manufacturers in your community, think about it, they're shipping their product probably all around the world. They're not coming to the chamber looking for customers. What they are looking for is a better business environment so that they can maybe expand. If you think about a manufacturer who has multiple locations, that location in your community may be competing with others within their own company, with other factories and within their own company to get that next business line so that they can grow. They need your community to be the best place for their company to be doing business so their company continues to invest in them. Your local banks, oftentimes looking to grow the economy because really their business grows as the economy grows. And the last I would mention is the legacy businesses. Many of your businesses who have been chamber members for 30, 50, 100 years, they joined the chamber to make the community better. And they're well established in the community, but they have that long history of wanting to invest to improve the business climate. Who else should you be looking for? Well, if you have any members driving this behemoth, this is the Tesla truck, you should be hitting them up to fund your new programs. And you might look at Tesla drivers, Apple 16 users, AI fanatics, and be like, oh yeah, I want to hit them up because they have money. It's not, they probably do if they're driving this Tesla, but that's not the reason they're your target. These are the people who want to be on the bleeding edge of things. They are the early adopters and they want to do the cool new thing before anybody else is doing it. So when you are creating a new sponsorship opportunity, be it for advocacy or really for anything, these are the people that you want to go hit. And the important thing about them is you don't need to hit every detail of what you're going to do with the money that they give you. Somebody who's going to go out and buy the new Apple 16 iPhone, when it first hits the shelves, they're not doing it because they've carefully researched all the functionality. They're doing it because it's the cool new thing and they can't wait to see what it can do. And they're willing to buy it before even knowing what it can do. And so if you think about that in the chamber context, you probably have members who want to be at the front edge of the new programs that you're offering, the cool new things that you're going to be doing in your community. And they don't even need to know all the details of what those are. They just want to be involved from the get-go. Now, when you're ready to go talk to those people, one of the things I would recommend is starting by asking them questions and let them do the talk. Let them think about what they need from the community for it to be a great place to do business and what the challenges are. You really want them conjuring up the problems that they have, whether they are specific to their business or about the community. And then you want to, ask them if they think you're the solution to them. And hopefully you've done a good enough job over time that they do recognize the chamber is the place that is convening people, connecting people, championing the progress that we need in our community. Ask them how valuable it would be if the chamber could solve those problems that they had, and what the consequences would be if the community or their business don't solve those problems. And then ask them if if the chamber's not doing that work, who will? Really, what you want to do is you want to lead them to the place where they see problems in the community, they see the chamber as the place to solve them, and they see the value in investing in the chamber as a way to get those problems solved. And then make the ask. Will you increase your contribution to the chamber to whatever amount it needs to be? It certainly should have 4 digits. It may, in many communities, have 5, to help us fund advocacy. Will you increase your contribution to help us fund advocacy? And you don't have to get into all the details. You don't have to promise them tickets to the legislative breakfast. But you can ask them what else they need. So you want to get them to fund advocacy. And once they're interested, then you can talk about, well, what else could we do that would be of additional value to you that maybe you would fund at the next higher level? Would you like to be the one who introduces the state senator at our legislative breakfast? Do you want to have your logo on our emails that go out each week? One thing I will caution you, and this is part of the reason why I say to ask as opposed to pitching potential benefits. Some of your bigger companies actually don't want their logo on legislative issues. They want the chamber to do the work and kind of be the shield between public policy makers and them. And especially with bigger companies, they're also sometimes skittish of having their logo on somebody else's message without their corporate comms or legal department reviewing it. So don't go out and presume that every member is going to want the same thing. Conversely, you might have a local car dealership that absolutely wants to be seen as the sponsor for advocacy in your community because they want the advertising aspect out of it as well as the community betterment. I want to jump to one other issue really quick. This is a little bit kind of as a side road, but I wanted to talk about cash reserves as a way to potentially fund some of those things that are losing money when you first implement them. I know a lot of chambers take a lot of pride in having very strong cash reserves, and absolutely, I think you should. But I have seen some balance sheets from some chambers where they have gone to the extreme, cash reserves equal to 2 years' expenses. And really, I just don't think you need that much. What I would suggest everyone does is look back at 2020 when COVID hit, look back at 2008 when the housing market collapsed. Those were probably 2 of the most severe shocks to our economy that we have ever had. And you probably saw declining revenues during that time. Go back and see how much money you needed to survive those 2 existential challenges to your chamber. And then maybe even add a month or 2 worth of expenses to that, just in case something even worse comes. But in all likelihood, I'm guessing you don't need 2 years cash reserves or even probably a year cash reserves. I think if you're probably in the 6 to 8 months, you're probably over-saving still, safe. And if you have more money than that, think about how you can invest that. And think about it this way. That's money your members has given to you over time to achieve your mission. And so obviously staying in business through a downturn is important to achieving your mission. But once you have enough to survive those shocks to the economy, you need to be taking the money that's an addition to that and investing it back in your mission. Now, we spent a lot of time on the revenue sides. I did want to talk a little bit more about allocating funds. So we talked about expenses related to events. And like I said, I think everybody is pretty comfortable with that. What else is an expense for you when you are implementing an advocacy program? I would say there's 2 real things that could require funding. One is creating capacity in terms of time, and the other is purchasing expertise. Really, those are the 2 things that go into creating an advocacy program. And as we look at what some of those costs might be and what some of the trade-offs are, one solution is you can go out and hire a VP of public policy. A lot of big chambers of commerce have that VP or a staff, and their costs go even higher. If you look at the trade-offs of time and expertise, when you hire somebody at that level, it requires a very little amount of time from you, the chamber president, and you gain a ton of expertise. But as you see from the cost, it comes at quite a cost. You could go for a slightly less seasoned employee, hiring maybe an advocacy coordinator. Again, the cost here, probably salary plus benefits plus computer, all the care and feeding that goes with hiring an employee. You're not going to get quite the same time savings hiring a coordinator position, because they are going to require more input from you, more time on your behalf coaching them. And you're not necessarily going to get a lot of expertise. You might get a great worker, but they probably don't have a lot of experience in the public policy arena. And so you do get some expertise, but not a lot. Third option, contract lobbyist. I'm just going to kind of quickly go past this one. In my mind, contract lobbyists are great if you know what it is that you want to achieve and you need somebody to go to the legislature and get it done. I think most chambers, when they're starting an advocacy program, it's more about the systems getting in place to determine what those issues are and to start building the infrastructure, the foundation for your program. And so that's part of the reason I say expertise gained is mixed. There probably are some out there, but my experience, there are not a lot of folks who do contract lobbying who have the expertise of building the program for a chamber to create an advocacy program. Now, the next two options are two that our company offers: outsourced consultant. So we will come in and work for you basically as your outsourced VP of public policy. It requires very little bit of time on your behalf because we do all the work for you, putting together meeting agendas, scheduling speakers, creating your legislative agenda with your committee, kind of the soup to nuts, everything that you would expect there. We'll monitor the legislature, report back to your members. So very little time requirement there. And humbly would argue we bring a lot of expertise when we do that. Between the members of our team, I think we've been in the government world for 40 plus years, probably more. I often tell people I measure my time in government affairs in gray hairs, not years. And as you can probably see, I've got quite a few of those. So that's our consulting. We also have another program called our Advocacy Framework, and you'll see it's a significantly lower price point. You will need to put in a little bit more time, but you will gain all that expertise that we have. Our advocacy framework, I'll talk a little bit more about in a second, but we basically teach you how to do all the things that you need to do for an advocacy program. And then the last option is just to take your existing staff and try to figure it out. And there's no incremental cost there. You're already paying salaries. It is going to require a lot of time. You're going to have to put in all the effort to kind of build up the program and go out and find the information that you need. And you aren't bringing in outside expertise. So I know some chamber execs have some expertise in public policy. And so if you already have that and you have time on your hands, this might be a great direction for you to go. So I did mention our advocacy framework program. It's a 12-month program with the goal of standing up your entire public policy advocacy program, putting together a robust legislative agenda, engaging your members, creating those events that we talked about before. We accomplish it through a series of video lessons. I think we have more than 25 now that you can watch. We have email templates, meeting agendas, resource guides, and very importantly, we meet with you via Zoom twice a month to answer any questions that you have and work through any challenges that you're facing. So we really think for the chamber that's small, that wants to be that 3C chamber, that wants to be an advocate and the voice for business of their members, but they don't really know where to start, we think this is a great way to start. And we'd love to talk to you about any of these options if they are something that you are interested in pursuing. I think we're going to put a link to my meeting calendar in the comments. You can go ahead and click that if you want to schedule some time with me. Whether you think that we might be a solution for you or not, I always love talking about advocacy, and I'd be happy to hear about the challenges that you might be facing.